Front Room is directed by Sam and Max Eggars, the brothers of Robert Eggers, and stars Brandy and Andrew Burnap, a soon-to-be parent couple that takes Andrew's stepmom, played by Kathryn Hunter, into their home upon the passing of his father. The elderly woman named Solange is a die-hard religious person, and when she gets comfortable in her new home, things turn into a potential nightmare for the young couple. The film is distributed by A24 Films, which is causing this movie to get many divisive reviews because everyone seems to expect excellence from A24. While this is far from the best film from that studio, it isn't as bad as some people seem to think that it is. The Eggers brothers shot the film well, especially since it mostly takes place in one house, and they do a good job of building isolation in this house. The movie is photographed very well and does a good job of conveying the malice, but it doesn't have any jump scares, so that may turn people off because it may not feel like enough of a horror film for them. What this movie does in terms of horror is show you some very disgusting imagery involving bodily fluids. It is the kind of horror film that wants to take its time. It is a very slow burn kind of movie and wants you to see it all the way through to fully appreciate what is going on in this house and with these characters. Kathryn Hunter as Solange is the star of this movie. I couldn't take my eyes off of her. She is so sinister, wanting to come off as more of a victim than she clearly is. Solange has many opinions of religion, and she attempts to take over the house from her stepson and daughter-in-law. It is enthralling to watch what kind of schemes she cooks up next. This is a pastiche piece, to be sure. It borrows from films like Carrie, The Taking of Deborah Logan, and many others, but where it shines is that it is not afraid to show what elderly people go through. I have a personal relationship with this story. My parents took care of a relative who was like this, seemingly unable to take care of herself, needing to be escorted to the restroom, bathed, etc. And occasionally there are accidents, and the film is not afraid to show that. It is disgusting but realistic and effective. It isn't horror in the traditional sense because we're not seeing people's heads being caved in or sliced in half. It just has the guts to show bodily functions up close and personal. So that may repel some, but since I grew up in an environment like this, I can relate to it on a disturbing level. That is the horror of this film. It will shock some people, but I felt it was good because the only other films I can think of where they showed these kind of issues in some kind of dramatic detail are films about serving soldiers, such as Born on the 4th of July with Tom Cruise. This is far from a perfect movie, though. To be honest, I think that the son character is worth it, even though it is supposed to be his stepmom. He seems more concerned with his work and leaves the tense relationship to be mostly built between Brandy's character and the mom. But I also have issues with Brandy's character. For starters, Solange suggests that they name their baby a different name, and for some reason, Brandy's character acquiesces to the request and seems to have a viewpoint of this woman living here isn't so bad at first, but then has an immediate turn that seems like it comes out of nowhere. I had the same issue with Afraid from last week, where the characters seem to change their tone about certain things way faster than normal, and it just seems to happen out of the clear blue sky. There's also a slight racism subplot that did not need to be in this film at all. Solange is devious enough with her intentions through her religion and speaking in her tongues that we didn't need to add in her maybe being a racist as well. It seems like a low hanging fruit that was only used to generate more sympathy for the main character, and I felt that we didn't need more sympathy for her because we already see the grueling things that she has to go through. So it just seemed like it was only added in there to pile onto the drama and the horror, and I think it completely misses the mark. Another thing that bothered me is that I said earlier how I had a personal connection to this kind of story, but one thing it doesn't do is show how an invalid woman could potentially strife a marriage. I saw that happen firsthand, so I know that taking care of someone can cause a great deal of resentment in a marriage, and I feel they didn't capitalize on that at all. It starts to hint at that, but then doesn't pull the trigger on it, and just decides to make them a mostly strong couple. That bothered me because it seemed kind of unrealistic. I think these Eggers brothers have better films than them than this, but that's not to say it's a bad film. I just don't think that they have the craft down yet like Robert Eggers does. Robert can build mystique and tension better than many directors working today with films such as The Lighthouse and The Witch. So I know that's big shoes to fill, but I know that these two have it in them if they just tighten the script a little bit more and add more consequences to the thing this woman is doing. I'm sure this movie is going to be very polarizing and maybe considered one of the weakest films from A24. And while it's not a great film, I think that the performance by Kathryn Hunter saves this film for me. I do not like the ending because there is basically no ending, at least one that feels like a satisfying culmination of everything that came before it. But since I think about 60% of this film works for me, it's one that I'm glad I got to see. It has flaws to be sure, But if you want to see a wonderful performance of an elderly woman being as weird as you can imagine, then this might be a decent film for you. Just don't go in expecting a traditional horror film. It is unlike many horror films I've seen this year, for better and for worse. I give The Front Room a marginal 3 stars out of 4. You can probably wait for this film to hit VOD, but it is worth one watch. I look forward to what all the talent involved in this does next. Thanks so much for watching. What did you think of this movie? Please let me know in the comments. We review multiple new films per week, classic horror films, silent films, and much more. So if you like this, please like and subscribe. And until next time, I am Ghost.